so much. Super to be here. Thank you to Epi for inviting me. I am Emily Mackay, and I'm the founder of a company called Crowdsurfer. We're based in Cambridge, just up the road, and what we're doing is building the data intelligence service for the crowd finance realm. Just a word before I kind of start the story itself. The term crowdfunding has already been used a few times this morning, so I want to just clarify what we mean by crowd finance. Wherever there's a marketplace that brings those who want to fund with those who need funding together, we call that crowd finance. Crowdfunding as a term can often mean just equity, peer-to-peer can often mean just loans. What I'm talking about today is all those marketplaces that form quite a substantial industry now of funders and those who need funding. So I'm going to start by telling you a little story about how crowd finance came about, probably familiar to many of you already, and then why Crowdsurfer is involved in this. And then move the story onto the data and some of the sort of the biggest data points that we're seeing and why it's important to what you're doing. I'm going to bring a bit of the outside inside because it's spring and we're all stuck inside. But this to me represents what the world used to look like. It was very dominated by a very established funding structure, which was largely a banking one. Nobody really thought that would change. It was very fixed in its ways and looked fairly impenetrable. And as we found out, actually, it was a little bit fragile. A lot of the banking world has changed very rapidly, and that's cleared space for innovation to come through. And the part of that innovation that I'm interested in is the crowd finance realm. And what we've got now is a very rich and young, diverse industry. This is actually the Valley of the Flowers in the Himalayas. And to me, it represented very nicely this young, very diverse, very fast-growing industry. What we have now is not just a handful of platforms, there are actually thousands. And that's perhaps the one thing that when people first come to us to explore the crowd finance realm, are most surprised by, that you have not just perhaps the ones that are making a lot of noise in the press or have big marketing budgets, but thousands and thousands of platforms right around the world. Where we're at now is they've moved several billion. We've mapped $16 billion in individual transactions. We know there's much more out there, and we're just at the start of our journey too. The way this is progressing is towards trillions. So each of these marketplaces, when you amass it all together, all the transactions that they are supporting are going to get into the trillions of dollars. So it's really a mode of moving money around the world that nobody can afford to ignore at the moment. And what we find is people come to it in a sort of bewildered state. They've perhaps read something in the FT or been to a conference, heard a speaker from a platform, and they kind of start to think about how it might impact their business as a corporate product development company, or as a bank, or as a consultancy, or even in the public sector, NGOs and so on. And they quickly get quite bewildered. And this is a very big problem, because whilst we've got this fantastic development of new innovation in the financial world, we've now got a lot of confusion, we've got a lot of hype, we've got a lot of noise, and there needs to be some way of people moving around that industry and understanding what's going on. What we're doing is building all the data infrastructure that allows people to do that understanding. So instead of being confused by the plethora of activity out there, all the platforms, what deals are happening, who's involved, how much are they raising, for what purpose, over what time frame, how many people backed it, how many people didn't back it. Was this something that the market just didn't get? Should we really be putting our R&D budget into it, therefore? So part of what we're doing is bringing the information together. For anybody who's in the data world, you'll understand that's a very messy task. It requires a lot of quite clever software engineers and data experts to create a schema for the industry, to pull that together, and to keep the data flowing, keep it clean, keep it structured, not to mention make it retrievable. We're actually going one step further than that. So once you've got all that information together and you come to our dashboard and you say, great, I want to look at biotech. this is what my company does. We want to see what the market is about to get excited about, what tomorrow might look like from the crowd's perspective in terms of that sector. You want to type in biotech and you want to find out what's happening. That is a very complicated task. We are building machine learning, artificial intelligence that will enable you to do that. And this is a system we call DAISY. And that came about because I was watching our lovely data scientist show us the first prototypes of this system. Everyone was getting really excited. We're going to be able to see exactly what the crowd is talking about. And the visualizations look like a sort of daisy chain. So DAISY is now our honorary member at Crowdsurfer. And that's technology that will hopefully be coming through into the Crowdsurfer dashboard very soon. Okay, so that's about us. Now I want to take you through, try and cut through some of the hype for you and give you some hard data points for you to then think about in relation to your own work. In 2003, there were about 500 crowdfinance platforms in the world, so websites that were bringing funders and fundraisers together. I should say this does not include currency exchange, does not include angel platforms that are merely advertising their existence, for example. These are genuine marketplaces that bring the two sides together. We've actually got more than 1,700 since I wrote these slides, nearly 1,800 now. And we're seeing about 2 platforms a day being launched. So every 12 hours, we're getting a new platform in the world. And this is genuinely global. Indonesia, Korea, Singapore, Sri Lanka, these platforms are coming through to us all the time. So whilst the UK is definitely leading in this, and there's a lot of activity in the US, it is genuinely global. So you can see the pace of increase. It's a very big market. And it's very diverse and disparate. I'll just step back so you can see just a collection of examples I pulled out. We've got universities raising very large development funds. We've got property that you can now buy a part of. You can back new products. You can back student loans. You can back legal cases. You can back young businesses. You can do all kinds of loan transactions, sort of peer-to-peer, where the benefit is a financial one rather than a tangible product-based one. There are so many examples. The platforms are just cropping up all over with niches that I hadn't even thought of. So the diversity is quite extraordinary. Someone was asking about trends a while ago. Trends in crowdfinance are towards more platforms globally and more niches being discovered. They're moving away from the generalists into the specific. And not only can we see what is being funded, but we can start to see the money, the monetary relationship that people are prepared to put in order to realise that. So, for example, in the loan space, we can see exactly what kind of interest rates people are prepared to put their money up for and are prepared to borrow for. Anything from very tiny percentages through to 30-odd% we're seeing. A very wide range. And of course, if you wanted to drill down into that and see what does that mean for property? What does that mean for unsecured consumer credit? What does it mean if I'm a young business? What does it mean if I'm a young business in another country? These are all questions that you can ask of the data. I've tried to make this very simple on the screen, but this is actually a huge amount of complexity in this. Basically, even the things that get through onto platforms don't always get funded. We capture both sides, both things that do and don't get funded. Most of it doesn't. So this perception that if you put something up on a crowdfinance platform, it instantly gets funded, and that's a bad thing. This is not true. The data shows that there is a lot of selection going on into where money will go. That pie chart changes a lot depending on the sector you're looking at, the platforms you're looking at, the location. So there's a lot of complexity behind that, but generally there is some selection going on, quite careful selection in where money is going. And that itself is a big indicator of what the world wants to see happen and doesn't want to see happen, or doesn't believe in, or doesn't trust. So for our part, we are trying to pull this information together and make it super easy for you to explore. We've got billions tracked already. It's moving into trillions across thousands of platforms. We are about 750 platforms into that journey globally. And you can come and trial this system for free. Take a look, see how it might affect your business. You can drill into all these figures, all these charts. You can find specific campaigns if you're perhaps in the professional investment community or the M&A community. You can look at big macro level changes if you're thinking about perhaps government policy and so on. So there's a variety of ways you can look into this information. Be delighted if you want to come, have a go, give us your feedback. And if anybody has any further questions, if we've got time, happy to answer them now.